Sometimes I play space engineers, and today things started a little differently. Usually my drop pod doesn't have wheels, but this one did. Fully equipped, fully mobile, and a marvel of engineering. So there I was, freshly crashed, freshly alive, and sitting in my drop pod on wheels. It wasn't much, but it had heart. The plan was simple: find a nice flat spot, build a cozy little base, and definitely not get distracted along the way. And then, right as I started my engine, I looked inside my inventory and found a GPS signal for something called ISEX Station. First of all, what the hell is that name? Second of all, of course I had to go check it out, so that became the first thing on the agenda. We put the GPS signal in and started driving towards it. So off I went. Across the hills, over the rocks, through tough terrain that looked like it was personally designed to flip rovers. Every bump was a gamble, every rock was a boss fight, but the rover held strong. Somehow, I think sheer willpower was keeping it together. Along the way, my sensors picked up gold and silver deposits. Jackpot. Naturally, I stopped immediately because nothing says mission focus like abandoning your route for shiny rocks. I mind a bit, not much, just enough to say I did something productive before getting distracted again. And then I hit the road once more, with slightly more resources and slightly less hydrogen. The journey continued. Kilometers of rough terrain, endless hills, and more power drain than my patience could handle. But then, a beacon on the horizon, an unknown signal. And for those who don't know, these little care packages that fall from orbit, they contain tools, components, or maybe even a rare suit skin. Or nothing but disappointment. So naturally, I dropped everything and drove straight to it. The reward? Well, the resources I grinded, and some nickel and a med kit. And of course the satisfying sound of grinding everything into scrap. Definitely worth it. I got back in the rover, now a little heavier, a little richer, and a lot more lost. Hours or maybe minutes, who can tell in this game, of driving later, I finally saw it. The ISEX Station on the horizon. It was big, industrial, mysterious, and probably abandoned. Perfect. But just before I reached the station, something caught my eye. A frozen lake, flat, spacious, scenic. The kind of place where you could build something beautiful, or at least something that barely works. I made a mental note. This is where the base will be. My frozen paradise. But first, I need to see what the hell that ISEX station was all about, preparing for a futuristic red light district. So I parked the vehicle and went inside, and to my surprise, it had nothing to do with the red light districts of the future. But anyway, it did have a shop, and it did have some contracts I could be doing in the future. So, with that mental note made, I headed out and began to roam towards the frozen lake again. On my way to the frozen lake, I spotted another unknown signal. At this point, I think the game was testing me. So like any rational engineer, I drove straight to it to grab all the things it had for me. A few parts when I grinded it all up, Also some credits, scrap and some vegetable seeds. After it all was grinded up, I continued my drive to the lake, where I would begin the base building. I arrived at the lake, and it was time to build. Step 1, power, because apparently things don't run on hopes and dreams. Who knew? So I threw together a wind turbine, simple, efficient, and conveniently tall enough to fall over if I ever hit it with my rover. Next, a basic refinery, then an assembler. Slowly my base began to take shape. A small patch of civilization in the middle of nowhere. And by civilization I mean a bunch of blocks stuck together and powered by a single turbine, praying for some wind. And of course, as soon as things started working, another unknown signal popped up. I ran off again like a moth to a very dangerous flame. I got the loot, but on my way back I realized something horrible. My jetpack was out of hydrogen. No fuel, no flight, just running. So there I was, sprinting across the frozen wasteland like a lost delivery guy carrying a backpack full of random parts, trying not to die from embarrassment. When I finally got back, I decided it was time for an upgrade. The drop pod vehicle / drop pod rover had done well, but it was time for it to evolve. So I strapped a drill to the front. No blueprints, no planning, just raw confidence and questionable engineering. Behold, the drop pod miner Mark I. It looked ridiculous, but it worked. Somewhat. So with my new drill I headed out to mine. The ground trembled, the FPS dropped, the drill screamed beautifully. I filled the storage and returned to the base and realized I had nowhere to put anything. So next project, cargo container, a big metal box to hold all my smaller metal boxes. I slapped it together and instantly felt like a professional. Look at me, logistics. Now that I had storage, I wanted something even cooler. A conveyor system, a place to dock future ships. Because if there's one thing I've learned in space engineers, it's that you should always build for things you don't have yet. So I laid out the connectors, pipes, junctions, probably the least efficient way as possible, but hey, it looked awesome. And that's when I started my greatest creation yet, the miner ship. Sleek, compact, a true marvel of early game overconfidence. It lifted itself and all of its weight on the way to its first test subject, the mountainside near my base. The drill got powered, ready to do what it does best, drill. The ship got filled up pretty quick and it got heavy. Really heavy, like maybe I shouldn't have mind that much. But anyways, the return trip was tense. Every thruster screamed, every battery blinked red. I was basically dragging a dying walrus through the sky. But somehow it made it back. Barely. So there I was, a base by a frozen lake, a rover that was still functioning, a mining ship that technically worked if you believed hard enough. The start of something great, or at least something that wouldn't immediately explode. So as the sun set over the ice, I looked at my tiny outpost and thought, yeah, sometimes I play space engineers. and sometimes space engineers plays me. Peace.